Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. In tonight's episode, I'm sharing 8 chilling stories of backwoods families and the strange legacies they keep hidden in the hills, tales of children who don't age, chairs set for someone who never left, and bloodlines that remember more than they should. If you've ever passed a house too quiet, or felt watched by eyes that looked a little too much like your own, this episode is for you. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are. Let's begin. We were 5 days into a winter hike near Mountain Lake when the storm pinned us down. I was the oldest in the group, 31. Former Army medic, used to cold, discomfort, and the weight of silence. The others were college kids mostly, friends of friends. I didn't know them well, just agreed to join because the mountains are easier company than people most days. My name's Everett Cole. I'd walked this trail before. But something about that week felt different, too quiet. Too much snow without wind, like the woods were holding their breath. When the snow hit harder than forecasted, we found an old roadbed and followed it downhill, hoping to reach the ranger station. Instead, we stumbled into a clearing where an old farmhouse stood against the snow like it had never left the 1800s. Smoke curled from the chimney. A woman waved from the porch. We hesitated, unsure. But our gear was soaked through, and the youngest in our group was already shivering too hard to hold his pack. They welcomed us in no questions, no names, just warmth, dry clothes, and bowls of something thick and steaming that tasted faintly of cloves and marrow. There were 9 of them, all family, simple clothes, soft accents. They didn't ask where we were headed or what had happened, just said, "We're glad you made it in time for the winter game." The phrase slipped past us like a joke, something quaint. That night they gave us cots, lanterns, a warm room that smelled like cedar. We all slept like we'd been drugged. No dreams. Just darkness that didn't move. In the morning, they laid out heavy coats and gloves for us. One of the men, a tall figure with a bone-handled cane, explained the game. "It's our tradition," he said. "Once a year, when the cold locks the valley, we draw lots. The loser lies in the snow pit till dawn, alone. If he makes it back to the house, we celebrate. If not, well, the mountain keeps what it's owed." We laughed, thought it was theater, folklore. But they were already writing names on slips of paper. I should have walked then, but something in me paused. The others were too far gone in the charm of it all. One girl, Mira, called it weirdly beautiful. Another said it was just like a horror story, but cozy. I watched them fold the papers and drop them in a wooden bowl, carved with strange patterns, circles, and jagged arrows that never quite repeated. The bowl felt old. Older than the house. Older than the words. They insisted we draw, one by one. We did. Mira pulled her slip and smiled. "Blank," she said. The rest followed, each slip empty, until me. Mine had a mark, a single black line, thick as ink and curved like a hook. I didn't react, just nodded. Quiet. The family clapped gently. "He'll lie in the pit," the woman said. "We'll keep the lantern burning if he returns before first light. We feast." They led me out past the barn, lanterns swinging low, snow deep enough to swallow my boots whole. No one spoke, not even the other hikers. It was a procession, almost sacred, the family walking slow and sure like they'd done this 100 times before. At the edge of the clearing, they stopped beside a pit carved clean into the snow, perfect oval. About 6 feet long and just deep enough that lying inside would hide you from sight. I looked back once, thinking I'd see some trace of doubt on someone's face. But all I saw were faint smiles and eyes that didn't blink. They handed me a blanket made of rough wool and a lantern that flickered low despite the glass shield. Lie flat. Don't close your eyes too long. And if you hear someone call your name, don't answer unless you see their face, the tall man said. Then they turned and left, their footsteps silent behind them. I stepped into the pit, pulled the blanket up, and lay back. Sky above me, a black sheet with no stars. The cold hit slow, not like a bite, but like a creeping hand pressing into my chest. Time passed strangely. My breath formed long ribbons above me, but there was no wind to carry them. No animals, not even the creak of old trees. Just the slow, steady hush of snow settling deeper. Once or twice, I dozed, waking with a start, as if something had been hovering just above the edge of the pit. My name came soft through the trees around midnight. A woman's voice. "Everett," she said, almost like a lullaby. But there was no one there. Just forest and dark, and the growing sense that I wasn't lying in the pit anymore. I was held in it. Then the whispering started. Not voices I could follow, but movement, like breath through dead branches, circling me in slow arcs. I clutched the lantern tighter. It flickered once, then stabilized. That's when I saw the figure crouched at the edge of the pit. Not one of the family, not anyone I knew. Its face was pale, its mouth too wide. No eyes, just the memory of eyes, like dark stains where light wouldn't land. It leaned forward and said my name again, the same way you'd hum a tune stuck in your teeth. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My mouth had gone dry, my tongue thick and useless. I closed my eyes and prayed for dawn. When I opened them again, the figure was gone, but its footprints remained. Not in the snow, but in the air itself, suspended, inverted, like burns across the dark. I stayed that way until light bled slow through the trees. The family returned at dawn, singing low, the kind of song you'd use to send something back underground. They helped me up, smiled wide. You made it. One of them said, that means it wasn't your turn. Back in the house, the others clapped and cheered like I'd won a game, like I should feel lucky. But something was missing. I looked around, counting heads. One of the hikers, Jared. The quiet one wasn't there. I asked where he'd gone. They stared back blankly. Who? Mira asked, spoon halfway to her mouth. You mean Everett? Another boy laughed. That's you, dummy? No one remembered Jared. Not his voice, not his name, not the photo we took on the first day where he stood right beside me. When I pulled out my phone, the photo was still there, 4 of us, not 5. Jared had vanished, not just from the group, but from memory. Only I remembered. Only I could remember. And I think maybe that means it was supposed to be me in the snow. That whatever crouched beside the pit marked someone. Maybe the game always claims something. And maybe the only rule that matters is whoever forgets first survives. It was early November, bitter cold, when I saw it. The sun had long since slipped behind the ridgeline of Clay County, and I was hours from the nearest town. Hunched in the back of a century-rotted church with only a headlamp and my field journal for company. My name's Reuben Glass. I'm 34, an ethnologist with a stubborn fascination for family myths and bloodline folklore. especially in the forgotten corners of Appalachia. I came to this ridge hunting what locals called the Crooked Line, a generational rumor of a family that never left, never split, never died out, always living in the same hollow, always bearing the same last name. The church was a husk weather-beaten beams, pews half swallowed by moss, and the smell of mildew so thick it felt like breathing through cloth. I'd gotten a tip from a local archivist that one of the last people to see the Merton family, every generation of which was said to have lived within these hills, claimed they kept a ledger of blood. Not a family tree, but something more binding. Something written not in ink, but in names sealed with blood. I took it as metaphor, a poetic exaggeration, until I found the ledger. It was beneath the altar, wrapped in oilskin and rotted linen, heavy. The pages were rough bark-like paper, some stitched, some fused by age. Each name had been scrawled in crude, shaky charcoal, and next to each name, a rust-dark smear I first thought was mold. Then I saw the date beside it, 1864, 1879, 1893, each spaced about a decade apart, each with a surname, Merton. I didn't recognize any of the first names, but the rhythm of the entries was mesmerizing. Like a ritual, about 3/4 through. The pattern changed. The names came faster, closer together. One every 2 or 3 years. The last page chilled me only one name. No date, no others around it. The charcoal letters were jagged, almost frantic, as though someone had scrawled them under duress. My name, Reuben Glass. I stared for a long time. I hadn't told anyone in Clay County I'd be here. Not even the archivist knew my full name. Just R. Glass on the email tag. I flipped back through the ledger, heart pounding. Every other name had the same rough style, as though written by the same hand across generations. The smears beside them, those weren't mold. I touched one, felt the brittle crust. Blood. There was no logical explanation. The ledger was old, untouched for decades. The church itself had been abandoned since the 40s. My hands trembled. I told myself someone had to be playing a trick, maybe a cruel joke from the archivist. But then I found the second smear, not on the page, on the altar itself, beneath where the book had rested. A thumbprint, fresh and red, still glistening. I backed away, the weight of the place suddenly unbearable. I tried to recall how I'd come up the hollow trace path, following a map drawn from an oral story. But when I stepped out into the clearing, something felt off. The trees had shifted. The path behind me was gone. Swallowed in fog, my GPS wouldn't connect. The compass spun once, then settled, pointing not north, but directly back toward the church. I told myself it was a glitch. Elevation distortion, cold weather interference, but I didn't believe it. Something in me, a low, ancestral instinct, started screaming to leave the book behind, to run. And yet I found myself walking back. One hand still clenched around the ledger, fingers smeared with old blood that wasn't mine. I made camp downhill, away from the church, too shaken to hike further without light. I settled near a dry creek bed. Sleep came fitfully, if at all, at some point during the night. I heard movement, not animals, not wind. Slow footsteps, just outside the ring of firelight, circling. And then, the sound of charcoal dragging across paper. I bolted upright, heart pounding. The fire had died to coals. No one was there. But the ledger had been pulled halfway from my pack, open again to the last page. My name had been underlined. ChatGPT said I left the fire to die and hiked at dawn. A restless, feverish march through fog that clung to the ridgeline like it had a mind. The hollow trace path hadn't returned overnight. I bushwhacked instead, trusting instinct and gravity to guide me downhill. But every clearing looked like the last. Same drooping cedar, same moss-eaten stones. Once, I saw a buck with 2 sets of antlers twist its neck unnaturally and vanish behind a tree too narrow to hide it. When I reached what I thought was a road, it wasn't paved, just 2 dirt ruts flanked by thorn scrub and silence so thick. It hummed in my skull. Around noon, I found a cabin gray timber, porch sagging, window shutters like eyelids sealed against memory. It sat in a hollow I didn't recognize, but the chimney still smoked, and a rocking chair creaked without wind. I don't remember knocking. A woman answered, face thin and long, like someone carved her out of the same wood as the door. She didn't ask who I was, just said, "Ledger called you." Then her eyes flicked to the book clutched against my chest like it was mine by birthright. I asked if she knew the Merton family. She laughed without humor and said, "All that's left of them is what's signed. You sign, you stay. That's the way." Her voice cracked on the last word, like it had echoed down too many empty rooms. I asked her if she was Merton, and she only said, "We all are, by now." She pointed to the wall above the hearth, where 10 small portraits hung in a perfect line. Same face, same eyes. Men, women, children, variations but one mold. That night, I couldn't sleep again. She'd offered me a room, said nothing more. I lay on the floor with the ledger beside me, unopened. At some point, I heard the singing. Low, tuneless harmony from another room. Not words, just breath and vowel, like someone trying to hold a memory in place. I stepped out to look. The portraits above the hearth were all turned backward, and the fire cast no shadows from the rocking chair. Though it still moved, I went back to the church the next day. I don't remember deciding to, I just walked until I arrived, like something pulled the root straight beneath my feet. The building was darker than before. The cross above the altar had fallen, now lodged sideways in the pews. The ledger pulsed with weight. I flipped to the last page, hoping my name had faded, erased somehow. Instead, another name had been added. Beneath mine, in that same frantic scrawl, I recognized the name. The woman from the cabin. Nadine Merton. I never told her my full name, but she knew. They all knew. I tried to burn the ledger that night. Took it to a dry patch, lit it with alcohol and my last match. The flames licked the edges. But the pages didn't curl, just darkened and reset, as if the fire passed through them and was forgotten. I buried it under stone instead, hiked out blind through rain, mud, and hours of lost time. When I reached the road, the fog lifted like a curtain, revealing a green sign, "Welcome to Clay County. Est. 1807. Weeks passed. I left the hills, returned home. Tried to forget. But yesterday, a package arrived. No return address. Inside my field journal, soaked through and heavy with mold. And tucked inside the last page, something scratched in charcoal. Sign and return. No ledger, no instructions. Just that. and a fresh smear of blood I don't remember offering. I've looked in the mirror lately, and something is shifting. My face feels echoed, like I'm becoming something pre-written. Last night I found a second toothbrush in the holder, identical. My voice sounds layered on recordings, as though someone else is speaking with me. I haven't answered my name out loud in days. But I know it's coming. The pull, the hollow, the ledger. And when it comes again, I'll go. Because by now, I understand. You don't find the Mertens. You return to them. I broke down somewhere past Mudlick Fork, West Virginia, right where the gravel ran out and the woods pressed in like they'd rather forget you ever came. I'd taken a back road to avoid construction on the highway, just a detour. I told myself, my name's Dylan Kerr. I'm 29, a traveling salesman by accident more than ambition. Mostly knives and sharpening kits these days, sold door to door or at little mountain shows if you can find them. That night I had no cell service, no working GPS, and a smoking radiator that hissed like it was warning me off the land itself. I hiked a little ways before the sun dropped, just trying to find a house, a light, anything. The forest around Mudlick has a hush to it, not silence exactly, but a kind of listening quiet, like the trees are waiting for you to say something wrong. After maybe a mile, I saw the glow. A house old, wood-framed, warm with orange light spilling through the windows and the smell of hearth smoke in the air. There was a woman on the porch, shelling peas into a bowl. She smiled when she saw me, like she'd been expecting company. She called me sir, asked if I was in trouble. And before I could even finish my story, she'd invited me in. The house was fuller than I expected. 7, 8 people inside. Maybe more. All family. They said. They moved slow, polite. Spoke with that soft Appalachian drawl that made everything sound a little like scripture. An older man offered me a towel to wipe the sweat from my neck. And the kids, 3 of them, just stared. Didn't speak. Didn't blink much either. I was grateful, though grateful for the warmth, for the offer of dinner, for the way none of them asked too many questions. The dining room was long, built around a table of weathered pine, plates already set, stew, cornbread, greens, all steaming like I'd walked in just on time. The head of the table was left empty. They said to take my place first. I hesitated, counted them. Then the chairs. 11 chairs. 10 people. I figured maybe someone hadn't come in from the back yet, or that they were just waiting on someone else. But the empty seat, it looked different. Worn, even clawed, like the wood had been raked over again and again. Still, I sat. They didn't move until I took the first bite. Then, all at once, hands lifted forks, spoons stirred, and conversation resumed. It was quiet talk weather. The crops, someone named Elsie who wasn't feeling well. No one spoke of news or towns. No one mentioned the year, I asked once, about where exactly we were. And the old man chuckled and said, right where you need to be. I finished 2 bowls of stew before I noticed the picture frames on the far wall. All black and white, all portraits. And in every single one, 11 people, seated at that same table. Each photo with a different stranger in the center. Always the same seat. Always the same blank expression from the guests. I stared long enough that one of the women followed my gaze and said, "We do like to remember folks who stop by." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I asked if they had a phone I could use, just to call a tow. The room went still. One of the children whispered something I didn't catch, and the old man stood slowly. "Ain't no phones here, friend, but we'll get you on your way in the morning. You eat your fill now. It's rude to leave hungry." I nodded, but something had soured in the back of my throat. I hadn't noticed how dim the lights were until then, or how the oil lamp on the mantel had no wick. I excused myself after dinner, said I'd sleep in the truck, but they wouldn't have it. Said it was too cold, too dangerous. "We've got a room fixed up," the woman said. "It's always been ready." I didn't want to argue. They were kind, after all. But as I followed her down the hall, I glanced back and saw the empty chair again. It had fresh scratches in the armrest. The room they gave me was clean but strange. No mirror, one narrow bed, a small cross above the door, but it hung upside down. I locked the door behind me with a wooden bolt and sat on the edge of the bed. Heart thudding. I listened to them in the hallway, moving slow, whispering in pairs. Not English, not anything I recognized. I laid down and closed my eyes. And somewhere, deep into the night, I heard the chair creak. Not the floorboards, not the wind, the chair, just once. I didn't sleep much after that. Maybe an hour or two, shallow and taut. The kind of sleep where you wake up more tired than before. At some point, I heard the door rattle gently, not like someone testing the knob, but like something brushing against it from the other side. I lay frozen, eyes locked on the crack beneath the door, watching for shadow, for movement. There was none, but the air in the room had gone stale, sour with the scent of something old and wet, like potatoes left to rot in a cellar. When morning came, the house felt different, quieter. No smell of breakfast, no creak of the porch swing. I crept into the hall. Every door was closed. The pictures in the dining room were still there, except now. One had changed. It was the same photo from the night before. Same table, same arrangement. But this time, my face was in the center. Eyes blank, body still, as if I'd been sitting there for years. The frame was warm when I touched it. I found the old man in the kitchen, staring out the window. He didn't turn to acknowledge me, just said, "Truck's fixed. Keys are in the seat." I asked him who fixed it, and he said, "We take care of guests." I didn't thank him. Didn't trust my voice to stay steady. Just nodded and backed out, careful not to turn my back until I was out the door. The truck sat where I'd left it, hood closed, dry ground beneath it, no sign it had ever overheated at all. I opened the door, and there they were, the keys, right on the dash, next to a hand-drawn map in charcoal that traced my exact path back to the highway. I didn't look back as I drove, not once, but in the rear view, I saw something move just at the edge of the tree line. Something low, fast, and dragging one arm behind it like it had too many joints. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station with fluorescent lights and the sound of a TV playing inside. Civilization. The clerk asked where I'd come from, and I told him. Just past Mudlick Fork. He went pale. "You going north or south?" he asked. I said south. He nodded slowly, like he was tallying something in his head. Then he said, "Don't take the back roads no more. Some places don't let go easy." That night, in my motel room, I opened my bag to find something that shouldn't have been there. A wooden spoon, carved and worn, stained along the edges. Same kind that sat at each plate around that long pine table. I threw it out the window and locked the door behind me. But I still dream of that empty chair, of the way it waited, and in my dreams, I'm always sitting in it, not moving, just watching, as another traveler takes their seat. It started with the singing. I'd been hiking alone in the hills behind Burnsville, North Carolina, scouting timber lines for a small logging outfit that paid better than it should have. My name's Nathan Baird, 32, divorced, and halfway between starting over and giving up. I'd spent the better part of the afternoon marking trees near the ridgeline when I heard the voices soft, melodic, layered like a hymn, but without any words I could make out. Just sound, beautiful and slow, rising and falling through the trees like wind through a hollow flute. I should have turned back right then. Instead, I followed it. Something about the music felt magnetic, like it bent the path toward it. No birds sang while it played. Even my dog, Marlin, who never left my side, had gone stiff at the first note. Ears back, growling low before retreating into the underbrush like he'd seen a bigger predator. I called for him, but he wouldn't come. The singing grew clearer as I moved east along an overgrown trail I didn't recognize, one not marked on any of the forestry maps. It led into a low valley tucked beneath the blue folds of hill shadow, the kind of place that feels like it's never been fully lit by the sun. They were waiting when I arrived, 8 or 9 of them, maybe more. A family, or what looked like one. Barefoot, dressed in old flannel and muslin, all standing in a ring around a fireless stone circle. Their mouths moved in time, eyes closed, singing. A woman with long gray hair opened her eyes when I stepped forward and said, "We hold the wind with our voices. Come stand in harmony." I tried to laugh it off, asked if they were filming something. But no one smiled. One by one, their eyes opened gray, pale, almost colorless, like waterlogged glass. Another man said, "We don't let it rise. If the song stops, the wind comes through." I backed away, but not fast enough. The woman moved toward me and took my hand. Her skin was cold, dry as bark. "Just hum with us, just while the dark passes." The air was utterly still, not even a breeze. Despite the open valley, I didn't know why, but I joined them. Just for a moment. Just to be polite, I told myself. I hummed a single note and felt something shiver behind my eyes. The wind didn't just stop, it hid. I realized then that there were no leaves on the ground, no movement at all, like the whole valley was suspended in breath. No time, no decay. I only meant to stay for a minute. But the singing didn't stop. They moved slowly, like tide, adjusting tones, falling silent one at a time, only to rejoin. A child disappeared during one of the transitions. I blinked and he was gone, mid-note, as though swallowed by silence. No one reacted. No one stopped. My voice cracked, and I stumbled out of the circle. As soon as I broke from them, the air shifted. A cold gust screamed through the trees, and the remaining singers clutched one another. The woman shouted something in that same hymn-like language and reached for me again. "Don't let it wake fully," she said. But her voice was nearly drowned out by the sudden howl. The wind wasn't just moving branches, it was dragging sound. Memories. Something deeper through the trees. I ran. I didn't care where. The trail I'd come down was gone. I looped back 3 times, but the stones had shifted. The landmarks changed. Once, I found myself circling the same rotten log no matter which direction I took. I opened my compass, but the needle spun wildly until it snapped in half. I still heard them, faintly, even far from the valley, singing, one voice short and somewhere. The wind screamed in reply. I don't know how long I ran. Time didn't behave right in that part of the woods. Sunlight fell the same way no matter where I turned, like it was stuck on late afternoon. I found an old hunting blind and climbed inside. Heart thudding, lungs raw. It was falling apart, nails rusted. But it gave me a moment to think. My hands were trembling so badly, I dropped my radio 3 times before realizing it wouldn't work. No signal, just a soft, whispering static that sounded too much like breath. That night, the wind didn't sleep. It roared down through the trees, stripping bark and sending branches flying. I stayed in the blind, curled up with my jacket pulled over my head. But even then, I could hear it something inside the wind, like a voice buried under snow, like someone calling for help in a language I didn't know. I dreamed of the stone circle, of the woman with gray hair weeping soundlessly, her mouth open wide but empty. When I woke, the forest floor was clean. No leaves, no twigs, just soft, raked soil, as if something had passed through and taken everything with it. I found Marlin the next morning, near the base of a pine that had been split from crown to root. He was alive, barely, his fur torn and eyes wide with whatever he'd seen. He wouldn't bark, wouldn't eat, just followed behind me, step for step, too close, like if he lost contact for even a moment, he'd vanish. I headed north, choosing terrain I didn't recognize, hoping to cross into another ranger grid. But no matter how far I walked, I kept finding symbols carved into the trees, circular patterns, spiraled like wind maps, marked in sap and ash. I passed the same one 3 times, though I never doubled back. I started hearing music again, not the full harmony, just bits. One voice, sometimes 2. Then silence. It didn't follow me. It waited for me. A lure. And I realized I'd been humming, not on purpose, but my body had picked up the pattern. My teeth vibrated with it. When I tried to stop, my ears rang so hard I couldn't think. I bit my own lip till I bled, just to break the rhythm. The taste of blood worked briefly. I don't remember finding the road. I just remember headlights. A trucker nearly swerved off the road when I stumbled out, waving like a madman. He drove me to the nearest hospital. Didn't ask many questions. I looked like I'd been lost for weeks, not days. They said my boots were worn nearly flat. I don't remember walking that much. I don't remember walking out at all. Weeks later, back home, I tried to explain it to a friend who'd worked these woods before. He listened, nodding, until I got to the part about the song. Then he went quiet. Said there were stories, even before the first loggers came about, people who held the wind at bay. That if the wind ever truly woke, it wouldn't just blow down trees. It would carry things, take things, names, faces, whole people. Marlin won't go near trees now. He growls at the wind, and me, sometimes, when I'm walking past a mirror or staring too long at nothing. I catch myself humming, a note I don't remember learning, a chord I never chose. And sometimes, on very still nights, I hear the wind rise suddenly, as if it's listening, waiting, missing one voice. There's a stretch of road near Summersville Lake I've driven 100 times, delivering parcels up into the hollows where GPS fades and folks still leave hand-scrawled directions in the mailbox. My name's Eddie Lang. I'm 41. And I've been with the Postal Service long enough to know which dogs bite and which families don't wave. One house always caught my eye, a collapsing A-frame cabin tucked about 40 yards off the road, with a fenced yard and the same 3 children always playing out front. A girl in a red pinafore, 2 boys in suspenders. I used to wave. They never waved back. They just stared like they were waiting for someone else. First time I noticed them was summer of 2013. I remember because the heat had warped the mailbox hinges so bad I had to use a rubber mallet just to shut it. The cabin was falling in even then, shingles missing, porch sinking. But those kids were out there, turning in circles, one of them dragging a broken wagon. No parents, no noise, just that trio, like a looped reel. I thought maybe someone was watching them from inside. So I kept my eyes on the road and didn't ask questions. But they were there the next spring. Same clothes, same faces, not a day older. After a while, I stopped waving. Something about them unsettled me. Not the silence, not even the stillness, but how their eyes seemed just slightly too knowing. Like they recognized me even when I switched trucks. I started timing my route to hit that stretch in daylight only, just to make the sight of them easier to bear. But one fall afternoon, caught by weather and late deliveries, I passed the cabin near dusk and they weren't outside. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like something was missing, like I'd just stepped past a familiar painting with one figure erased. The next morning, I stopped the truck and walked up to the house. I don't know why. Curiosity, guilt, maybe something deeper. The air near the cabin felt cooler, the smell sharp with mildew and dust. The front door hung open slightly. Inside, it was dark and still. The kind of still that doesn't belong in a place once full of people. Toys littered the floor, wooden blocks, a rusted tricycle, a doll with no eyes. In the main room, a mantel clock ticked, but the hands didn't move. I found the photo on a bookshelf, warped from moisture, black and white. Taken decades ago. A family stood in front of the cabin, mother, father, and the same 3 children. No mistake. Same pinafore, same suspenders. The back of the photo read, Summer, 1952. My throat went dry. I looked again, hoping it was some kind of family resemblance. But the girls' eyes were unmistakable, too wide, too calm, like they knew something no child should carry. When I stepped outside, the air felt wrong. Still, yes, but heavy now, as if the world had paused to watch what I'd found. The children were standing at the edge of the yard, not where I'd entered, behind me. Silent, close. They hadn't moved a muscle, not even to blink. I backed toward the truck slowly, but my legs felt sluggish, like I'd walked too far in a dream. When I turned the ignition, the truck sputtered twice before starting. By the time I looked up again, they were gone. I filed an inquiry with the county. Off the books. A friend at the courthouse said the property had been foreclosed since the 80s. Condemned in Appalachia 94. No known residents, no utilities. I asked about the children and got nothing but confusion. A week later, I tried again, drove past on a clear day. The yard was empty. Fence half collapsed. Porch caved in completely. But there, on the mailbox, was a fresh drawing in red crayon. 3 figures holding hands. I kept the drawing in the glove box, thinking maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe some local kid had wandered by. But it bothered me the way the lines were firm and deliberate, not the scribbles of a child. Each figure had dark circles where the eyes should have been, and one of the boys had something long and crooked coming from his hand, like a stick or bone. After that, I started dreaming of them. Not nightmares, exactly, but cold, colorless dreams where I stood in that yard while they watched from the tree line. Silent, waiting for me to speak first. One morning, I found my truck already unlocked. Nothing missing, nothing broken. Just the door ajar and a small object placed neatly on the seat. It was a glass marble, milky white, smooth and cold. I hadn't seen marbles in years. It looked old, like something pulled from a box that hadn't been opened since Eisenhower. When I touched it, I swear I heard something faint. Laughter. Maybe. Not cruel, just distant. Worn thin by time. I left it in the ashtray and drove my route like nothing had changed. But I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pinafore or suspenders appear behind me. Then came the day I passed the cabin and the children were moving. Not just standing, moving. Slowly, deliberately. Walking along the edge of the yard, hand in hand, eyes locked on the road, as if timing their steps with my truck's wheels. I didn't stop. I didn't blink. But that night, the marble rolled off the dash by itself and landed perfectly in my palm as I sat parked in my driveway. I dropped it and didn't touch it again. I called a friend of mine, a ranger who worked near the lake. Told him I'd been seeing things near an old A-frame. Asked if there were any reports of squatters, trespassing, anything. He got quiet and said, only place that fits that description burned down in '58. Lightning strike. Whole family inside. Parents. 3 kids. Never found the bodies. Just bones in the wrong places. I asked what he meant by that. But he wouldn't say. Just told me not to go back. But of course, I did. I waited for a gray morning, cold and overcast, and pulled up slow. The cabin stood like it always had, half fallen, barely breathing. But this time, the door was wide open, and inside it smelled like damp cloth and memory. I stepped in and saw the photo again. Only now. There was a 4th child. Me, standing just behind them, hand on the girl's shoulder, face blurred like a smeared thumbprint. My name had been scrawled on the frame in faded pencil, Eddie. I ran. Haven't taken that route since. I put in for a reassignment and now work warehouse intake. No more long roads. No more empty places. But sometimes, in the morning, I'll find red crayon marks on the outside of my truck door. Sometimes. I wake to the sound of something dragging across my porch. And once, just once, I found that same marble on my nightstand. Still cold, still watching. I think those children never grew because they don't live in time the way we do. They linger, looping through their last moments, waiting for someone to join the game. And I got too close. Close enough that now, they remember me. They called me up from the station late, just as the sun was dropping past the ridge. Couple way out near Greenbrier Gorge said their baby had taken ill and couldn't keep food down. I'm no doctor, not really. But I've been serving this part of the Appalachians as a rural medic for a decade now. My name's Dr. Walter Hinley. And in places like this, sometimes all folks need is someone who'll show up and listen. I packed my bag and drove out past the paved roads, through the brush so tight it rattled the mirrors. The house was far deeper than I'd expected. Small log home with a stone chimney and a porch swallowed in ivy. The man who met me didn't say much, just nodded and motioned me inside. He looked worn in a way you don't learn from labor, like he hadn't slept right in weeks, like something deeper was pulling at him. Inside, a woman sat in a rocking chair, cradling the baby. She didn't look up, just kept whispering something soft to the child and rocking so slow it was like watching time forget itself. I asked to see the infant. She held him out carefully, reverently, like handing over something not meant to be touched by strangers. The baby looked wrong immediately. No color in the cheeks, no breath fog at the lips. His eyes were open, but dry, too dry, staring without blink or focus. I reached for my stethoscope, pressed it gently to his chest. Nothing. No beat, not even the faintest flutter. I pulled back, and that's when the baby turned its head and whispered, in a voice too deep and too clear, "Walter." I nearly dropped him. The mother reached out, took him back without reacting. "He knows who tends him," she said, brushing back a curl of hair that hadn't moved all night. "He's ours by blood. You can't take what's already claimed." I stepped back, heart racing. I asked how old he was. 8 months, the father said, flat or near it. Since the storm took the creek and he came up through the roots. I didn't understand what he meant, not then. I told them I'd need to take the baby to the clinic, run proper tests, file a report. That was when the father closed the door behind me. Quietly, no threat, just finality. He won't survive outside the hollow. This is where he's tied. You go pulling roots, you'll tear what holds him. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted to leave. But I couldn't shake the sound of my name coming from that tiny mouth. I made excuses, said I'd return in the morning with supplies. They didn't stop me. But when I stepped outside, I found that every path back had blurred. The road had split literally. 2 forks where there'd been one. Both looked used. Both faded into fog. My compass needle spun for a second, then stopped pointing behind me. Back to the house. I drove anyway. Chose the left fork and kept the lights on high. No landmarks, no birds. Just miles of trees that leaned too close and shadows that bent the wrong way. I didn't see the house again. Not that night. But the baby's voice echoed in my head long after I was home. My name. Over and over, like a thread being pulled tight. I filed the report half-heartedly the next day, omitting most of the truth. Just said the infant appeared non-responsive, recommended further visits. No one followed up. No one ever does this deep into the gorge. But the baby's voice stayed with me. Not just the word, not just Walter, but the way it felt like it didn't come from the child's throat, but from inside my own head, echoing backward through time. I started hearing it in quiet places, the stairwell at the clinic, the woods behind my house. Once, even in the silence, just before I fell asleep. And every time, it was louder, closer. I went back, couldn't stop myself. I told no one, left before dawn, hoping I'd imagined it, that the hollow wouldn't be there, that the house would be gone like some dream crumbling at the edge of waking. But it wasn't. The house stood the same, draped in ivy and shadow. The woman sat in the same chair, same rhythm, baby pressed to her chest. Only this time, when I stepped onto the porch. She looked up, and so did the baby. The eyes were different now, black from edge to edge, no white, The father came around the side of the house carrying a bundle of roots, slick and knotted with mud. He's growing fast. He said, "Takes after the ones before." I asked what he meant, and he smiled. "You heard him. That means he's choosing." I didn't reply. Couldn't. Because deep inside, some part of me believed it. I walked around the back of the house and found a shed with no door, just a heavy drape of cloth. Inside tools, medical tools, old and rusted, but familiar. Stethoscopes, scalpels, files with names scratched out, and journals, dozens of them. I opened one. My own handwriting stared back at me. Walter Hinley, Patient Observations, 1998. But I wasn't in this region then. I wasn't even licensed. Another journal. Same handwriting. Different name. Dr. L. C. Parnell. Another. Dr. Hale. Pages full of notes on the same child. Same symptoms. Same whispered names. I stumbled back, heart hammering. When I returned to the front porch, the woman was gone. The baby lay alone on a wooden cradle, wrapped in what looked like burlap soaked through with soil. I stepped closer, drawn against my will. The baby turned its head toward me, mouth moving, but no sound escaping. Still, I heard it. "You'll come when I call. You'll always come." I reached for the bundle, but my hands didn't respond. My knees buckled. I woke hours later at the edge of the property, alone. I haven't gone back, but I still see the baby. In dreams. In windows I passed too quickly. Once, in a mirror that didn't show my reflection at first. I hear it crawling, slow and deliberate, in places it shouldn't be. I find damp footprints in my hallway, shaped too small for a child, too wide for feet, and always, I hear my name. Never screamed, just whispered, promised. I think it's not a baby. Not anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe something uses a child's face to keep itself close, to root itself in blood and name and duty. And I answered. I listened. That's all it needed. I was 26 when I drove into Giles County with a borrowed camera and too much pride. My name's Connor Fielding, and I'd been filming Backwoods interviews for a documentary on mountain folklore, curses, changelings, cold town hauntings, that sort of thing. I'd heard whispers about a family up near the border, no phones, no power lines, no census records. The same faces for over a century, they said. Always the same number of them. Never aged, never changed. Just the unchanging, as folks down the road called them. I found them where the gravel gave up off a deer trail that twisted through brush thick as rope. The house was large, whitewashed, roof sagging but not broken. There were no sounds of birds, no wind. Just a stillness that felt like breath held too long. I approached slow, camera bag in hand, rehearsing my pitch. The door opened before I knocked. A man stood there. Tall, clean, pale like candle wax. His face was wrong, not disfigured, just too smooth, too even, like someone had forgotten to carve in the details. He smiled. "We've been waiting." He said. I told him who I was, what I was doing. He nodded. It's good to be seen. They let me in without hesitation. A woman emerged from the hallway, same smooth features, same soft eyes. Behind her, 2 boys. One older girl, identical. Not twins, not even siblings. Copies. And every one of them smiled just the same. They offered me tea, poured from a pewter pot. The house smelled faintly of earth and salt. I scanned the walls, no photographs, no clocks, just hand-carved frames with mirrors. But none showed reflections. I started filming, asking questions. What do you remember of this place? How long have you lived here? They spoke in riddles, always in unison. We've been here since the image first held light, one said. Another added, every eye sees its own shape, but we are the shape. I laughed awkwardly, chalking it up to mountain poetry. But something in my gut twisted when the children began repeating the last word over and over, shape, 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 until their voices became one low hum. I tried to leave at dusk, made excuses about fading light, but the man blocked the door. You haven't seen all of us yet, he said. Then came the others, more family, a dozen, maybe more. Stepping from rooms I hadn't noticed, each one a match. Same nose, same mouth, a perfect average of the human face, like they'd been rendered from a single template and given just enough variation to pass a glance. I backed into the living room. The mirrors still reflected nothing. We'd like to show you, the woman said, stepping forward, what you could become. She handed me a small box. Inside was a photograph, grainy, old, but unmistakably mine. Same face, same clothes, standing among them. I shook my head, told them it was doctored, staged, but they just smiled wider. That night, I stayed in a guest room with no door handle. I tried to keep calm, told myself I'd document everything. Get out, publish it all. But the camera was gone, my bag empty. Only a small mirror had been left on the table beside the bed. I looked into it. At first, I saw myself tired, scared, angry. But then something shifted. My features softened, blurred, smoothed out until the face looking back was theirs. I smashed the mirror against the wall, but it didn't crack. Just fell in one piece to the floor, face down, as if it had never been glass at all. I pressed against the window, but it wouldn't budge. It wasn't even a true window, just a square of lightless space framed in wood. I felt watched, not from the hallway, but from behind my own skin, like something had settled in my reflection and was waiting for me to blink first. They came again around midnight, the man and woman, and 4 others I hadn't seen before. They stood in the doorway, silent, until I asked what they wanted. To welcome you, he said. It takes time to soften the shape, but we see it forming. I told them to leave. I screamed, but none of them flinched. Instead, they began humming, a low, slow resonance that vibrated in the floorboards, in the pit of my chest, in the back of my teeth. When I woke, the room had changed. The door was gone. The bed, gone. Just me, the mirror still face down on the floor, and the soft hum coming from the walls themselves. I picked up the mirror again. This time, I didn't see anything at all. Just black, like it had gone blind, like I don't remember eating, don't remember sleeping. But time passed. I know it did, because when they returned, I knew all their names. Names I'd never heard spoken aloud. They brought me new clothes, pale linen, soft as breath. Mine were gone, rotted, maybe taken. I put them on. I don't know why. I think some part of me had started to listen, to believe. They took me to a long room I hadn't seen before. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors, each one cloudy, as if something had breathed across the inside of the glass and left its shape behind. I looked into one. I saw myself, but not the me I remembered. My nose was straighter, my eyes wider, my jaw softened. Not bad changes, just adjustments. They stood behind me. "You're almost ready," one whispered. "Only your name remains." I laughed, or tried to. "Connor," I said, too loud, trying to make the sound real. But the word sounded foreign, off-pitch, like trying to speak through water. I tried again and again, but it wouldn't settle, wouldn't take. It was being peeled away. They don't speak to me anymore, not aloud, but I feel them, around me, within. My face is almost theirs now. My reflection nods before I do. Sometimes I see it smile when I haven't moved a muscle. The house has no windows because none of us need to look out anymore. Everything we are is within. Shared, echoed, mirrored. If you ever find yourself lost in Giles County, and someone with a soft smile and a too familiar face offers you tea-run, because once you've seen them, once they've seen you, you begin to remember what you've never been, and they'll show you what you've always been meant to become. The black flag had been flying for at least 3 weeks when I finally stopped to ask about it. I'm a mailman, a rural route out in Mingo County, West Virginia. Name's Glenn Weller. I've run this stretch near the base of Naugatuck Ridge since before the storms changed the riverbeds. Most of my stops are quiet cattle gates, half-collapsed barns, a porch light left on for no one in particular. But that house, number 118, on an unpaved loop no one else lived on, had started to feel like it was watching me. Every morning, same flag, jet black, nailed to the same crooked post, edges frayed like it had weathered more than wind. I'd never delivered much there. Junk mail, a few government envelopes. The flag started after one of those deliveries. A thin white envelope marked "Final Notice" the day after. The black cloth went up, and the front gate, which had always been chained, was swung wide. I didn't see anyone outside, but I smelled food cooking every morning: bacon, onions, fresh bread. Once, I heard laughter, not loud, not joyful, just continuous, like someone was repeating the same chuckle over and over, waiting for someone to laugh back. On the 4th Monday, I walked up the path. I shouldn't have. It's not protocol. But I needed to know. The porch boards creaked underfoot, and when I knocked, the door opened before my hand touched wood. Inside was warmth unnatural for February, thick with the smell of wax and rot. A woman greeted me, late middle age, dressed in black but smiling wide. "You made it," she said, like I was late to dinner. "Come pay respects. We're still holding vigil." The living room was full. 10, maybe 12 people, all seated around a long table covered in food that steamed without source. Roasted chicken, carrots, fresh rolls. No one looked up, just stared at the place setting nearest the hearth, one chair draped in a black shawl, an untouched plate before it. A large framed photo sat behind the plate, half obscured by candlelight. I stepped closer and stopped cold, my own face smiling. But not any smile I remembered giving. I backed toward the door, muttering apologies, excuses. The woman followed, hands wringing politely. "You don't have to go. You already belong to us. We mourn what's not yet past. Glenn, the wake's just to make it easier." I stepped off the porch without answering. Didn't run. Didn't want to give them reason to chase. Just walked until the truck was in sight and drove without looking in the rear view. That night I checked my personnel file. Everything was as it should be: name, date of hire, ID photo. But the ID badge in my wallet didn't match. Same name, same number, different photo. One I'd never taken. A little older, a little paler. And behind me, in the image just visible, was the woman from the porch, standing in the shadows, smiling over my shoulder. I stopped delivering to that house the next day, marked it undeliverable in the log, a harmless excuse. But every morning, as I passed that turnoff, the black flag still fluttered, stained now, a little longer, like it had been soaked and stretched. I avoided eye contact with the house, but I always saw someone watching, never moving, just framed in the window, like part of the wall. I started having dreams, if you can call them that. I'd wake up standing by my mailbox, shoes soaked, fingers numb, staring down a gravel road I didn't live on. And each time, I'd feel something heavy in my pocket, a folded paper I never dared unfold. By the second week, it was spreading. Other houses, ones I'd never noticed before, began displaying black cloth. Some tied to railings, others pinned to front doors like warnings. One house I knew for a fact had been empty for years, suddenly had a rocking chair on the porch and a plate of food left at the threshold. Same food every time. Chicken, carrots, bread, still warm. I stopped telling people. The one time I did, my supervisor. Just offhand he laughed like I was joking, then stared at me for a long time, like he was trying to place my face. Then came the Sunday where I found the headstone. It was in my backyard. No markings on it at first. Just a slab of uncut stone, sunk half into the frost. I dug around it, thinking some kids were pulling a sick prank. But the soil beneath was hard-packed and undisturbed. No grave, no hole, just that stone. The next day, it bore an inscription: Glenn Weller, remembered by kin. The date was blank. I went back. Had to. Something in me needed to see it again, to know it was real. The house at 118 was brighter now. Windows lit with soft yellow, smoke curling from the chimney like it was painted there. I didn't knock. I just stepped in. The table was full again. The same people, the same food. But this time, they all turned to look at me. Every face smiling. Every eye wet with something between sorrow and joy. My seat was waiting. Same shawl, same photo. But the photo had changed. My eyes were closed now. Hands folded in my lap like I was posing for something final. The woman stood and raised a glass. "Let it not be feared, but known," she said. And they all repeated it. "Let it not be feared, but known." I stepped back out the door. Numb. I don't remember the walk back. Only the chill. The way the trees leaned in close. Like listening. Like waiting. Now, I get letters with no stamps, no writing. Just black envelopes. Always sealed with wax. Always left on my nightstand, no matter where I sleep. I burn them. They return. I see my face in mirrors a second longer than I should. My mail truck smells like wax and chicken. And yesterday, I checked the postmaster's roster. My name was listed under the in memoriam section. I still drive the route, still deliver the mail, but I'm not sure who remembers me. Not anymore. The wake never ended. I think it was never for them. It was always for me. And I just arrived fashionably late.